Valentine's Day just came and went. I hope you all had a lovely evening in the arms of your lover, or sobbing into a tub of Ben and Jerry's to console your existential loneliness. Whichever was applicable. Did you do much yesterday, Stelios, with the missus?
My lady is in York, so
Right.
we were Skyping.
Oh, that's wholesome. There you go.
I mean, we spend time together.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. In the
But I
aftermath,
mean, it's just a day.
yeah, but
It is.
it's always nice to at least have a reminder to
ceremony.
express the love, and also it's not. Well, for me, it's not just a day because it's a Catholic feast day and it's been conscripted by the marketing departments into making it very vapid, but I think we should reclaim a bit of that sentiment. Unfortunately, the modern dating landscape is absolutely awful, so let's examine some newly released data on what Zoomers want in the desert of eligible candidates. To paraphrase a wise man in dating, you get what you effing deserve, and this is your symposium, which you can watch if you pay £5 a month, on Aristotle and justice and merit. I don't know if anyone saw Todd Phillips posted a photo as well of Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix playing Joker and Harley Quinn. None of us deserve that. Absolutely not. It's horrible. But this was a really good discussion, so go over and watch it and find out to be a better man. Speaking of how to be a better person, I suppose, we'll go to our favourite place, TikTok. I'm going to do what you subject everyone else to, and we're going to watch a dating coach articulate...
Why do you have to reveal my secrets?
Well, because
They're not
reciprocal
so secret.
torture,
Yeah,
Stelios.
yeah.
Come on. The dating coach has given us the formula for inevitable loneliness. Let's watch, please, John.
On a third date a couple weeks ago, and after the date, I had told my sister, this guy is so sweet, but he's not the one for me, and I feel so bad. And I told her this story, how when he picked me up for the third date, he had this wrapped up bagel. I'm going to put a picture right here. He had this wrapped up bagel because he had told me beforehand that he's from the East Coast and there's this amazing bagel shop and they have the best bagels in the world, and like on and on and on about it. And I was like, oh my God, I got to try this bagel. His mom had sent him a dozen bagels and he froze one for me to save for our next date so I could try one. And just a couple days before that, I was in Vegas for New Year's Eve with my friend, and he asked for my Venmo so he could send me money for a drink. And he sent me this Venmo that said, you're cute, can I buy you a drink? Which is, oh my God, the sweetest thing ever. And then when we're out at this third date, we're sitting at the restaurant and he's sitting across from me. He's like, oh my God, you are so pretty. Like, you are just so beautiful. I'm like, thank you, he's so sweet. And so I'm telling my sister all of this and she's like, oh my God, that is so rare. Like, this guy is so great. And my response, I was not trying to be bitchy in any kind of way, but I'm like, no, it's not rare. Like, also, I'm a dating coach, so I have a different mindset around it. But I'm like, this isn't rare. I'm like, honestly, this stuff happens for me a lot. Like, I only date guys who treat me this well. I only date guys who are that level of sweet or like complimentary towards me or loving or thoughtful. Like, that is not rare for me. But when she said that, it hit me like, this is one of the reasons why women stick with people who aren't the right fit, because they see these behaviors as rare. And maybe right now you're listening, you're like, it is rare. I've never had a guy do that. I've only had one guy do that. Guys aren't like that. Think about your standards. Think about what you allow and what you accept. Because I know when I had different standards is another word for expectations. When I had lower expectations, I got lower effort. Now my standards are up here, and now this is typical shit where I know for other reasons this is not my person, but I am not in a scarcity mindset where I'm like, I have to stick with this guy because no one else is going to be this sweet to me, no one else is going to be this thoughtful, no one else is going to treat me that right. I 100% know that is false because I only date guys who treat me that well. And it is only as rare as you allow it to be, based on what you are willing to put up with, based on what you are willing to stick around for, and based on who you are available for. And yes, I did end up ending things with this guy. He was super sweet about it, very understanding, very kind, and I hope the best for him.
I'm sorry for that intolerable vapidness, but I just had to illustrate how the grass is greener, fear of missing out mentality of hypergamy is a road to nowhere. Like, she is going to be alone for the rest of her life. And any woman that takes this advice will be. Because yes, you should have very high standards about how your partner treats you. But you've got to pick one. Like, the guy's bending over backwards to do stuff for you, and you clearly don't deserve it because you're an incredibly narcissistic person. And what this does is it leaves people emotionally vagrant because they're constantly worrying about trading up, and so they can never commit to someone, and you're just going to be lonely. You're going to run out the biological clock. It's horrible.
I mean, the word sweet, whenever guys are described as sweet, that's a red
That's
flag.
the death knell, yeah. Your testicles retract back, yeah.
No, it means basically that she's not into you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She looks at you like a pet. Yeah.
And I think
But you should still be romantic. That's slightly different.
yeah, but it's how they use it.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, it's sweet is like,
As John just said, sweet is a misnomer for weak in the minds of quite a few women. The only thing is, though,
sugary.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Sure, you should also get it of where a woman doesn't scorn your romantic gestures. They should have the appropriate attunement for knowing what is sentimental, what is the effort that goes into things. They shouldn't just dismiss things as cringeworthy. You need the appropriate understanding, and this woman isn't dealing that out. She's constantly saying, women, you should always be looking for your next best upgrade. Well, you're just going to be alone.
I don't know if this anticipates stuff, but it seems to me that the whole social media thing leads men and women to think that basically they have way more choices than they actually have.
Absolutely.
Because they have more choices with respect to browsing images.
Yeah, dating apps just induce paralysis by analysis because you're getting a cultivated image of a person's best life, and so you collect them, and then it also incentivizes non-committalness because if there's a delay in responding, if you aren't meeting up for quite a while, you can just ditch that person and dismiss their concerns and never know whether or not they're actually interested.
And I want to say something.
Please.
It won't take long, but I want to say that this way of viewing things is completely abstract. Because if we talk about persons, that's one thing. You could always say that there is someone that is somehow at some point a better match.
Yeah.
But the point is that it's not just, we don't live in a platonic heaven where we have souls meeting each other. We have flesh and blood human beings in particular in particular cities, particular towns. It's not just that you can go throughout the whole globe for a date.
Yeah. Well, lots of guys are. Have you heard about the passport bros by any chance that have given up on Western women and so they're flying out to Asia and Eastern Europe to basically pick up traditional brides?
That basically destroys my brain.
Sorry, that really made me laugh. Right, John.
Brain fry.
Can we skip the next one, please, and just go straight onto the this info dump recently? Now, this was really interesting, and it's made me really happy to be back dating now. I can tell you. The January 2023 American Perspective Survey of more than 5,000 adults aged 18 or older, including nearly 800 single adults, finds Americans have strong dating preferences when it comes to living at home, being unemployed, and smoking. These are especially salient considerations for women. Now, women's dating preferences are kind of the selection mechanism by which men select and compete for markers of competence. So women are meant to be holding men to account all throughout civilization, right? Men posit the values, women enforce them. So that's a really healthy way of doing it. When we look at the values that women are looking for, it's largely discouraging. There are a few encouraging markers for some of you single lads out there looking to meet women. Right, so today's Americans spend a greater time of their lives single. The rise in divorce and delay of marriage mean that dating occurs later in life, and our dating lives last much longer than they once did, so a period of arrested development. Not only are Americans spending more time dating, the goals for dating, which at one point primarily served as an avenue to marriage, are less clear than they once were. In 2021, only about half of Americans, slightly more men than women, report being married. The US Census Bureau reports a steady decline in marriage rates going back 50 years, and that's particularly economically determined. Most people getting married, the income bracket's going up, so most people aren't getting married. It's at the lower end of the ladder, whereas marriage is one of the main ways that if you don't have a baby out of wedlock, you get married and you get a job. That's the trifecta of how to get started in social mobility, and you're just taking that away from the people who have the least at the bottom. 1 in 3 Americans have never been married. Only 25% of younger adults, 18 to 34, are currently married. In 1978, younger adults were almost twice as likely to be married at 59%. So we've suffered a complete death blow to the marriage rates. The number of Americans cohabiting with their non-marital romantic partner has more than doubled over the past 3 decades. Nearly 6 in 10 younger Americans report having cohabited with a romantic partner. Now, this is one of the reasons that marriage is going down the pan, because you're basically playing house. You're playing at being married because it is more economically expedient to share rent with a partner, and that way you never get a house deposit and you never actually have a reason to settle down. You're essentially saying, yeah, you're all right for now, but as soon as I decide that we're going to break our contractual agreement, I'll scarper off. And it's not like you're doing that. You're engaged to your missus. It's not like Harry's doing that. He's engaged to his. But I've lived with a couple of girlfriends a couple of times. I can tell you now, fellas, never do it. Because all that ends up happening is she gets comfortable at this particular living standard. If there's any kind of disruption in the living standard, she thinks, where can I trade up from here? Because this is my new normal. And she'll just scarper with half your money.
if she thinks this way,
Yes.
and if people think this way, because it's men and women who think this way, and they live together and they cohabitate, then at some point, marriage becomes a cost. Because
Yes.
they become habituated into living together.
It's just a piece of paper, right?
Yeah, and they say, okay, it's just a piece of paper. Why should we pay so many £1,000 or dollars or euros, whatever, to do it? Let's just be here and chill.
Yeah, it's very flippant because people don't realize that marriage is about the children. And lots of people don't realize that, as we'll get onto much later, because there just really aren't any children for most people anymore. More than 3 in 10, 35% of Americans, have never been married, but only about 1 in 5 are currently single. Over half, 53%, have never been married and are currently living with their partner, have been in a relationship for at least 5 years. Why aren't you married? Nearly 1 in 3, 32% of Americans living with their partner, have been together for at least 10 years. So a third of Americans living with their partner have been with them for 10 years and have never tied the knot. Marriage has become a defunct institution. Again, we'll figure out why later. Nearly 6 in 10 young men, compared to 38% of young women, reported being single during the pandemic. At the end of 2022, male relationship status was largely the same as it was more than 2 years later. Today, a majority, 57% of young men are single. Young women appear to have experienced a modest increase in single status, close to 45%. So we are approaching the Rousseauian conception of savages in a general will state, where we're getting increasing abundance, we're getting like AI art that caters to our unique experiences. We don't share anything anymore, but absolutely no one has a relationship. So we're just all atomized pod people, eternally consuming.
I hope that's not true.
But
whenever you hear someone saying, "I hope I'm wrong," that's where you're in deep trouble.
Yep.
But Rousseau wasn't the best of fathers.
No, he was horrible, just like Marx.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, luckily, not many people are mothers and fathers nowadays to be horrible to them, but also not luckily, not many people are mothers and fathers. We kind of need you. Only about 1 in 10 single Americans report they're currently dating one person, 11%, or more than one person, 2%. 42% report they are not currently dating anyone, but remain open to the possibility. 42% of people don't have a date lined up, but are desperately longing for connectivity.
Okay, I have to interject here.
Yes.
And maybe you will disagree with this, but I think it's an interesting point. Aren't we a bit obsessed with people dating or not? Because it seems to me that this is part of the problem, that when we feel that we constantly have to be out on dates and we constantly have to be on relationships.
Because they're not dating for a purpose, because marriage is an institution and children as a life goal has been defunct. So you're going out and dating for an experience and constantly looking to trade up. You're getting the dopamine high of increasing the people that you're constantly with.
Exactly. And because, as you said, that marriage can be seen in teleological terms, it could also have a first stage, which involves being some self-mastery and self-development.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that it's a problem if people at some points don't go out on dates and they don't have partners. It's what you're trying to do with your time.
But lots of
if
people
you're using your
improving.
time to let's say focus on a journey, a spiritual inner journey of self-development, then I think that's a good thing.
Yes, John's also pointed out that the disparate rates between young men and young women dating, it just says that they might be dating older men, if not the men, or each other, John, as well. Increasingly, women are just dating women because that lesbian domestic violence rate's got to go up, apparently. Nearly half, 47% of single men report being open to dating, compared to only 36% of single women. Loads of female incels. They just checked out the dating market, apparently. The gender gap in dating is even wider among young singles. More than half, 52% of young single men say they're open to dating, compared to only 36% of young single women. Young adults aged 18 to 29 are far more likely to have used an online dating service than seniors, 33% versus 9%. But Gen Zers are actually less likely to have used dating apps than millennials are. So why is Gen Z just checking out of dating? 36% of single adults say having more important priorities is a major reason they're not dating. Single women are much more likely than single men to say this is a major reason, 45% versus 29%. An identical number, 36% of single Americans say difficulty meeting people is a major reason that they're not dating. Roughly equal numbers of single men and women, 35 and 38%, say this is the major factor.
I think that's the funnier thing. Difficulty in meeting people, because this is where I think social media comes into it, and it gives a completely mistaken idea of having, many choices. And I think this affects people in all sorts of ways. And I have a theory that I want you to
Please.
tell me if it's not very well worked up, but I think it's fun to put it
I
forward.
can see the impish grin, so I'm waiting for it.
Yes. So I think, okay, I saw where you were talking about it. It spoke of, Democrats and Republican traits.
Yes, later on.
I don't think that's the issue there so
Right.
much. I think we should see it in terms of players and non-players. What do I mean by that? So I think that what social media have done is that they have increased the perceived reach of players. And women see this and they suddenly think, well, I could have this guy. And they progressively they progressively move they do not date people who do not fit particular criteria.
Yes. Well,
And I would say that it is these people who are not afraid of commitment, but I would say it's more that how social media is taking many young women away from people who may not have, let's say, the best looks or the best body or physique or something.
I wouldn't know about that. I know the OkCupid data came out and said that 0% of women rated the men that they were presented with as 10 out of 10, and 80% of women were going for the top 20% of men in terms of earning and looks.
Yeah.
So lots of women's perceptions are askew. And there's actually testimonies in this article which speaks to the phenomenon you're talking about. There's one woman that says people think they just have a million options. It's like when you want to watch a show and you put on Netflix and like you literally find yourself, typical Cali speak, not being able to decide for like an hour, and then you wind up not watching anything. Anytime a person, man or woman has limitless options all of the time, there's this perception, and most of the time it's a false perception, that who they're with now is not good enough. That's why no one has the patience with each other anymore, because they could always get something better. We're trading up on the grounds of hypotheticals, and it's just running out your ability to actually meet a mate in time to have children.
I think if they think this way, the game is already lost. Because
For them?
love is not I don't see as
Transactional? No.
yeah, it's not transactional, and it doesn't follow logically. You don't say, okay, let me put in some input and calculate the data, therefore I should love this person.
There's no formulaic way to ensure relationship success.
Yeah.
Something we'll be talking about on Symposium this week when we record. Stay tuned. There's also a rise in inceldom. More than 1 in 4, 27% of single Americans, say a major reason they're not dating is they simply enjoy being single. 1 in 5 Americans who are not currently dating anyone say that nobody being interested in them is a major factor. So it's not that they're self-improving. It's not that they're at that level there. There's not that continent stage of reaching the teleology of marriage by going from self-improvement to courtship to marriage to children. It's just that they're existing as a consumer and they're not doing active things to better themselves. And because they're not doing that, they're caught in the cycle of depression, of low self-esteem, which thinks nobody likes me and I don't deserve it anyway, so I might as well just give up. It's the eating Doritos in your basement mentality that quite a lot of guys have. And it's also the mentality of women on the other side of, well, I'm not going to settle for anything less than having a Bugatti. It's ridiculous. Obviously, women's expectations are...
Have you seen the fake photos that they occasionally have with really, they're posing on a Bugatti or something?
Oh, God almighty. It's
Sorry,
just
sorry.
unbearably
Apologise,
cringeworthy. That's all right. Women's expectations are pretty askew on what women demand versus what the men themselves expect. So they're saying, I don't want to be in a relationship where someone isn't open-minded about things that I want to do. Like if they have their point of view on something and I have a different point of view, I'd like to have a conversation about it. Or pretty much my biggest thing is respect. If we're in a relationship, you shouldn't have any dating apps on your phone at all. Or we ask for simple things, remembering things that we talked about in conversations, flowers occasionally, date nights. Every once in a while, just have that reassurance that our relationship is worthwhile and feeling like we can really spend great quality time together. Now, that seems perfectly reasonable, right?
Yeah.
But then...
I mean, we could interpret some of those statements in a particularly uncharitable way.
Well, we don't know how that plays out with the individual women because women say one thing and then act out another because women will say, I just want a bit of reassurance and then act like vultures on your self-esteem going, love me.
You know what? I don't think that these accounts are reliable. Both for men and women, because I think love is not a rationalistic demonstration.
I agree.
It arises spontaneously. It seems to me that this is paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, sure.
And it's also signaling a particular image. It's like some women, for instance, or men who constantly say, I would date a celebrity.
Yeah.
A celebrity is my type, because they want to appeal cool.
Yeah. And
But that's not the way to go forward.
actually, that's borne out in the revealed preferences of what actually happens between what they say versus behave, because there's another testimony that says, a lot of women I've met, a lot of my own peers around the same age are unmarried, they're out there looking for Mr. Perfect. He's got to be 6 feet, he's got to make so much money each year, his family has to be perfect, he has to agree with all my personal beliefs, and you know, men are human too, they're not going to meet all of those expectations. I think men are still looking for a type of woman that doesn't really exist anymore. They're looking for a 1950s housewife type woman, and that's just not the type of girls I think are out there today. A lot of girls want to go to college, have a career, make a name for themselves in the world, and they don't want to settle. Right, so you want to be a man, and the high value men that you are chasing and making demands of, 6 foot, really rich, competent family, wants a woman. So be a woman. Don't go out and make yourself voluntarily unattracted to the type of men who are saying, I want a traditional wife. And you're like, no, I want to be a boss girl, but you should accept me anyway.
Yeah, but because they think that they're going to change that guy.
Yeah, I can fix him.
Yeah.
Yeah, savior
But
mentality never leads to anything,
that's the
fellas,
issue, that
believe
if
me.
they do this, they're suddenly not attracted to that person anymore.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
no woman's also attracted to a man that she could basically mother. Like, every woman wants a man that's better than
Difficult
her.
truths are spoken here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you need it if you're going to try and save the West and have a relationship. 81% of women compared to 56% of men said they'd be less likely to date someone who didn't have a job. That is the key thing. Men mostly don't care about what you do necessarily for a career, as long as it doesn't make you an actively horrible person, and if you're in a bad financial strait, you can kind of pull your weight a little bit. But most men want to out-earn their women, and most women want their men to out-earn them. Like, if the rates of divorce for women that out-earn their men are astronomically higher, because a woman wants to look up to you. She wants to be protected and be provided for. It's a biological drive, and it's totally respectable. So women, if you want a competent man, don't compete with him. We don't find it attractive. Like, we're quite simple. We like pretty, nice, listens to our stories, right? Thinks we're funny. That's it. We're kind of still cavemen deep down. So don't try and be a bloke, because we just don't like it. So here's what men want. 55% of Americans rate the attractiveness of their partner about the same as themselves. About 1 in 4 Americans believe they're the more attractive person, while 17% believe their partner is more attractive. And the outstripping of women is by a factor of about 10 points. So men want a partner who is far more attractive visually than they are, but they want to earn more. And women are going, right, but I want to be super attractive, and I want him to be 6 foot, and I want his family to be more intact than mine most of the time, and I want to make similar money, but I want him to have more. Do you understand how infinitesimally small that pool is? Like, if a guy's sweet, and he's got good money, and he's got good ethics, settle down with him, especially because married men actually make more money, because you are the driving motivator for him to go and earn more.
I've heard that this idea that men are more image-oriented and women are more story-oriented. I'm not entirely sold on this, but I do think that
It's the
it
people
has
versus
something.
things dichotomy.
Yeah, because I think that also women are really prone to image, especially from TikTok and the dating apps.
Yes.
Yeah, but I do think that there is something in the story account, the narrative bit, because they very frequently do find good people in a traditional sense boring.
Yeah.
And I think that this plays into a narrative that they may go on into their minds, that they, for some reason, they want to see themselves as taming someone.
Yeah, that's the beauty in the beast arc. There's also the relative level of investment before you start dating someone. So most guys, if you are attracted to a girl, if she's made herself known to you, or if you're just approaching her in a bar, I guess if people still do that these days, most guys will go, oh, she looks pretty, she sounds nice, I'll buy her a drink. Whereas most women will go, do I accept the offer of a date from this guy unless I have already concocted a fantasy of will I end up with his kids, or will we end up traveling the world and I'll be a childless spinster, or whatever it is. You know, unless the women have the narrative already playing out in their heads, they won't say yes to your date. So she has to have an investment level in you way higher than you before she'll even say yes.
I'm looking at there.
Yeah, this is what women and men want, which is really interesting. So if you want to find out how to find a compatible partner, and of course we don't have any leftists in our audience, politics are okay, but the strongest indicator for leftist women is politics, right? That's 24% of women are far more likely to date you if you're a Democrat and they're a Democrat, right? 4 in 10, 42% of Americans say they'd be less likely to date someone who's very religious. That's interesting, because 20% say they would make them more interested in dating someone who is very religious, of the same religion as them. So there's a large cohort of atheists who really don't like it, but a very small, strong cohort of people who share your religious convictions who are dating for that. And so if you have a religious conviction, then you are dating specifically for marriage within that religious tradition. And so if that's the case, you actually have a decent chance of meeting someone who lines up with your values. 69% of liberals say they'd be less inclined to date a very religious person compared to 24% of conservatives. There we go. So that means there is a larger cohort of conservatives that are actively seeking religious compatibility. This is a good pathway for you to find someone. 3/4 of conservative women, 75%, say they'd be less likely to date someone who doesn't believe in God. 75% of conservative women want Christian men. I'm telling you, boys, the church is the new Tinder. There's also height. So women are very discriminatory based on height, because of course they were. 92% of women want a taller man. So sorry to all the short kings out there. Nick Dixon will find someone eventually, I'm sure. 56% of women rule out dating men shorter than them almost entirely. So men kind of don't mind. Actually, there's 32% of men that are open to dating a woman taller than them. I guess they want to just get stepped on. So either go to mass or buy some stilts, fellas. Politics is really interesting. Roughly 2/3, 65% of Democrats say they'd be less likely to date a Republican. More than 6 in 10 self-identified Republicans say they'd be less likely to date a Democrat. So the dating market is bifurcating. More than 9 in 10, 91% of liberal women say they'd be less likely to date a Trump supporter. Conservative men express the greatest objection to dating feminists, with 70% reporting they'd be less inclined, because they know it's cancer. For liberal women, abortion is especially salient during consideration. 6 in 10 say it would be impossible for them to date someone with a different view on abortion. Just an indication, boys. Don't ever marry a woman that's confident killing your kids. You'll have no lineage left. The interesting thing, though, is the conservative men are happiest in marriage, right? Republican men report being most satisfied in their relationships, while Democratic women report being the least, because the Democratic women are sleeping with feminist men. Nearly half, 48% of Republican married men say they're completely satisfied with their spouse. 42% of Republican married women say they're completely satisfied. 36% of Democratic married men and 29% of Democratic women report being satisfied with their relationship. So the Republican relationship satisfaction holds after accounting for differences in education, race, ethnicity, age, and religion. So it just seems that being a conservative, no matter your religious tradition, background, ethnicity, or earnings level, means that you're much more continent in your relationships, and it's going to go the distance.
I must say here, because we did a symposium with Carl, which
Yes.
will be released 2 weeks from now. Michael Oakeshott has this brilliant line where he says that the conservative does not part with a known good for an unknown better.
Yes.
And it seems to me that this is behind all of this.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea behind the social media thing is that we are so much bombarded with images, and there is the Gen Z people, they have this idea that there is a better somewhere out there. And they are and they're so much infatuated with this idea that they don't look at the good things in front of them.
They sacrifice the tangible for the hypothetical and end up getting nothing.
Yeah.
Don't do that. You won't be very happy. Then just on to cheating briefly before we wrap up. Black women have the highest rates of partner infidelity. Moving on. Open relationships. Only 7% of Americans have ever been in an open relationship. 28% of gay or lesbians and 22% of Americans who identify as bisexual have been in an open relationship. So it's a very niche community which they all want to swap fluids. And then lastly to children. Children's the most important one because that's what marriage is for, right? Roughly 4 in 10 Americans say they'd be less likely to date someone who does not want children. 44% say this would not matter to them, and 14% say that this would be more likely to date them. 14% of people never want children for the rest of their lives, so they're merely having a companion throughout their lives who services their basic needs, which means that those people are probably far more likely to be narcissistic. So if a woman doesn't want children, fellas, run a mile. Unfortunately, that's lots of them. Because we go to this data, recently released by the ONS, half of women in the UK are now childless above 31 for the first time ever. So this has been since records began in 1920. A third of women born in that decade had not mothered by a child by the age of 30. Women born in the 1940s were the most likely to have had at least one child by that milestone, 82%. The most common age to have a child now is 31, the ONS estimates on the latest data, compared to 22 among the baby boomers in the 40s.
Well, that's a demographic bomb.
Yeah, that's it. We're just actively destroying our country. So we are living in Simone de Beauvoir's world. If we go to just the last link, please. This is what Carl and I spoke about in The Evil Origins of Feminism. This woman was so sexually repressed and self-hating that she prescribed women rebel against their biology, completely discontinue from reproduction, deny themselves the pleasures of motherhood, enter the workforce en masse, have female-only Marxism, and that results in the complete depopulation of the earth and the subsumation of orderliness back into the chaos before creation, devoured by the great dragon Tiamat, who sends forth her waves of feminism. Let's not do the bidding of antinatalists for them. Go out, hit the gym, go to church, volunteer in your community, just become an outspoken Christian man, online as well, because Twitter is also quite useful for meeting people. Good luck, kings and queens. We're going to need you.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Symposium, Justice in Plato's Republic. If you'd like to find out what else the Lotus Eaters are putting out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.